War is often remembered for its battles, its heroes, and its turning points. But what about those who were destined to fall before they even took their first step onto the battlefield? This is the story of Robert Selden Garnett, a man whose fate was sealed not by chance or courage, but by circumstances beyond his control. In June 1861, Brigadier General Robert S. Garnett rode out of Richmond under orders to defend Confederate interests in northwestern Virginia. Yet unlike many of his contemporaries, he carried no air of confidence, only dread. "They have sent me to my death," he confided to colleagues on the eve of his departure. Little did he know how prophetic those words would become. Born into privilege, Garnett rose through the ranks of the U.S. Army with distinction, earning accolades for bravery during the Mexican-American War. He stood shoulder to shoulder with legends like Zachary Taylor and Robert E. Lee. Yet tragedy seemed to shadow him at every turn. His wife and only child claimed by fever, his designs immortalized in California's Great Seal, while personal losses haunted his heart. When war came, Garnett found himself thrust into a role he never sought to lead Confederate forces against Union advances in the rugged terrain of Western Virginia. It was here, amidst the chaos of Rich Mountain and Corrick's Ford, that his final chapter unfolded. On July 13, 1861, Robert Selden Garnett became the first general officer killed in the Civil War, a grim milestone marking the beginning of 4 years of bloodshed. But more than just a statistic, Garnett's story reminds us that war claims not only lives, but also dreams, legacies, and the very essence of humanity. In this video, we uncover the life and death of a forgotten figure whose sacrifice echoes through the annals of American history. Here is the full story to enjoy the history on iRich History Channel. Rather than embrace his appointment to command the Confederate forces in northwestern Virginia with enthusiasm, Brigadier General Robert Selden Garnett expressed morbid dread. "They have not given me an adequate force," Garnett was overheard to say the day before he left Richmond for the battlefront in the Alleghenies. "I can do nothing. They have sent me to my death." At the time, Garnett was serving as Adjutant General of Virginia's Volunteer Army under Robert E. Lee. Garnett graduated from West Point in 1841 and served on the staff of Major General Zachary Taylor during the Mexican-American War. Having served in the U.S. 4th Artillery Regiment, he was well qualified to step forward and direct the crew of a 12-pounder at the Battle of Buena Vista when its commander was seriously wounded. Tragedy stalked Garnett. While serving at Fort Simcoe in the Washington Territory, his wife and only child, who resided with him at the fort, both died of fever in September 1858. "One day he went off on a mission," wrote Mary Boykin Chestnut. "They were gone 6 weeks. When he came back, his wife and child were underground." 41-year-old Robert Selden Garnett was a newly minted brigadier general in the Confederate Army when he was sent to Western Virginia in June 1861 to command the Department of Northwestern Virginia. Often confused with his cousin, Brigadier General Richard Garnett, who was killed in action at Gettysburg during Pickett's charge, Robert Garnett not only preceded his relative in death, but also the 121 other general officers killed or mortally wounded during the Civil War. Robert Garnett was born in Essex County, Virginia, on December 16, 1819. An 1841 graduate of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, New York, he became an aide to General Zachary Taylor during the Mexican War, where he was twice brevetted for gallantry. Following Taylor's resignation from the Army in 1849 to become President of the United States, Garnett was tasked with carrying dispatches to the military governor of California, located at the Presidio in San Francisco. During his time out west, Garnett sketched a design that would later be adopted as the Great Seal of the state of California. In November 1852, Garnett returned to West Point to serve a 2-year stint as the Commandant of Cadets under the Academy's Superintendent, Robert E. Lee. With Virginia's secession from the Union in 1861, Garnett resigned from the U.S. Army and was appointed a colonel in Virginia's Provisional Army. Being subsequently appointed Brigadier General in the Confederate States Army on June 6, 1861, he was sent to command the rebel forces in Western Virginia guarding the vital rail lines and turnpikes of the area against Federal incursions from Ohio. Before leaving for his new post, Garnett became troubled by the expectations of success in the region, making the premonitory remark, "They have not given me an adequate force. I can do nothing. They have sent me to my death." As Major General George B. McClellan led his Union forces into Western Virginia at the start of hostilities, Garnett positioned his men at two important passes in present-day West Virginia, one along the Staunton-Parkersburg Turnpike at Rich Mountain and another 16 miles north at Laurel Hill. On July 11, 1861, the Confederate forces on Rich Mountain were defeated by a brigade of Federal soldiers under the command of Brigadier General William S. Rosecrans. The loss at Rich Mountain forced Garnett to also abandon Laurel Hill and retreat with his forces east through the Allegheny Mountains en route to the Shenandoah Valley. Federal forces hotly pursued Garnett's army. 2 days later, on July 13, 1861, they finally caught up with the rear of his 2-mile column along the Shavers Fork of the Cheat River at a crossing known as Corrick's Ford. Hearing the fighting in his rear, General Garnett rode back to the river only to find his rearguard in chaos. As the fighting intensified, Colonel William Taliaferro of the 23rd Virginia Infantry urged the general to fall back. "The post of danger is now my post of duty," Garnett replied. Still, on horseback along the river's edge, Garnett turned in the saddle to order his skirmishers to withdraw just as soldiers from the 7th Indiana Regiment unleashed a volley from the opposite bank. A ball struck Garnett in the back, causing him to reel from his horse. The Union soldiers ran across the ford, reaching the fallen general as his muscles were making their last convulsive twitch. The first general officer killed in the Civil War lay headfirst on his back, dressed in a black overcoat. Unaware of his identity, the Federal soldiers sent word back that an officer with stars on his shoulder had been killed. Shortly thereafter, Major John Love, a Union aide, happened to arrive at the scene and recognized the dead man as Robert Garnett, his old West Point roommate. General Garnett's body was removed to the William Corrick house, overlooking the ford, and placed in a wooden coffin. His remains were then transferred to family members in Baltimore, Maryland, where he lay buried for the remainder of the war. In 1865, his body was reinterred in the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York, next to his wife and son, both of whom had tragically preceded him in death. Moreover, war often leaves behind stories of valor and sacrifice, but it also tells the tales of those whose fates were sealed before they even stepped onto the battlefield. Robert Selden Garnett was one such figure, a man whose life was marked by both brilliance and tragedy. From his distinguished career in the U.S. Army to his pivotal role in shaping California's Great Seal, Garnett's contributions extended far beyond the battlefield. Yet when the Civil War erupted, he found himself thrust into a command fraught with challenges, ultimately becoming the first general officer killed in the conflict. Garnett's story is not just about his untimely death at Corrick's Ford. It's about the dreams unfulfilled, the legacies cut short, and the human cost of war. His premonition, "They have sent me to my death," proved tragically accurate, yet his memory lives on as a reminder of the sacrifices made during America's bloodiest chapter. Whether through his bravery in the Mexican-American War or his quiet dignity in the face of personal loss, Garnett left an indelible mark on history. As we reflect on this poignant tale, let us remember that every soldier has a story, every leader carries burdens, and every casualty represents more than just a statistic. Robert Selden Garnett may be a lesser-known figure in the annals of the Civil War, but his legacy deserves recognition. By understanding figures like him, we gain deeper insight into the complexities of war and its profound impact on individuals and nations alike. If you enjoyed learning about Robert S. Garnett, the first general to die in the Civil War, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the iRich History channel for more fascinating historical content. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode.